Morning, Pat.
Good morning, Chris. How's it going?
Good, good. Great to see you as always.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess one of the things we were going to try to do today is sort of have a little bit of a subject matter. I mean, sometimes we kind of go here and there, but we're going to look at, I think, if I'm understanding, um, um, where we place our value, or where we get our value, or what we understand value to be as a human being, in this culture in these times. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it's perfect. And in your practice as a therapist, I mean, you know so much about what ails people. So why don't you start off with what you
Sure,
have seen
sure.
over the years?
I'd be happy to. And I just say, I certainly have this clinical license and all that, but I really prefer now to do more of a contemplative companioning with people. So a commonality, including, well, I'm part of the common, um, is this sense that somehow we're not enough, that we're missing something, that our value is dependent upon what we produce, as opposed to having intrinsic value within ourselves. And because that's such a common thing, we are just buffered about by, okay, what is it I need to do to prove that I'm valuable? And I mean, we are under such a strain. And I think we talked about this before. Certainly the culture of the United States is very much based on, what you produce and what you give out. Your external life is so important. But that's global too, I think. I think we sort of agreed. Um, so that with that underpinning, with the underpinning that I'm not enough, and I have to continuously prove that I am enough by doing this, thus, and so. What a strain! And where is the time we spend on recognizing what's beyond that, or what's within that we're ignoring? It
What's
sort of
causing it?
pushes the idea of, yes, what's causing it, but even more, I think what I'm alluding to is, uh, when you're under that kind of duress to produce, when do you have time to actually get in touch with your heart, or what's going on inside of you? If you're pulled outside of yourself to that outer world, show me what you got, buddy. I mean, when do we get
Well,
down to brass tacks?
and we have to show people what we've got, or the culture says, show me what you've got immediately. So,
Mm,
so you have to be well dressed. You have to be well spoken. You have to be confident. You have to have initials before or after your name.
yeah,
Um, and you have to be really, really good at what you do.
yes, you do. Yes,
So
you
the
do.
expertise has to be front and center.
Yep.
This is not in every culture, but when I was living near the big city, this is what the value system was all about, was this, you know, I'm
Absolutely.
good
I remember.
because
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Here's proof.
here's
So
proof.
thus the question. Yep. Go
Right.
ahead.
Here's proof, and I'm going to give it to you. You're going to know about it right away.
Absolutely. And thus that question that's asked at every gathering when you get next to somebody. So what do you do? So what is it that you do? I mean, when you're a stay-at-home mom and you happen to find yourself at one of these gatherings, you're just at a loss for words, because in my experience, when I have said that while I'm at home with my children, um, oh, oh, nice. And the head turns to ask the question of someone else, because that doesn't seem like a very lucrative, or even maybe perhaps important
Lucrative. Oh my God.
So I'm not saying that nobody respects a mother's duties and what a mother does in her life, but at a party, at those kinds of gatherings, that often would leave you sort of high and dry. And then I started thinking about that question. So what do you do? I mean, it's quite a question, isn't it?
Yeah, I decided years ago that if somebody asked me that, no, not somebody asked me that, but if I want to know something about someone, instead of saying what do you do, I'm going to say what do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah,
Because I'm not really interested in what they do,
right,
you know,
right.
and they don't even want to talk about it because they do it all day long.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And it tells you very little about them
right.
in essence, because it puts them into that workaday world, and they're going to start talking the lingo of that workaday world, as opposed to what they're feeling, what's going on in their lives at a deeper level. And yeah, I mean, I think both you and I, that tends to be where we drift. Who is this person really?
Yeah.
And what's their struggles, and what's their joys, and what have they overcome in their life? I love that question.
Hmm.
What have you overcome in your life? Because in fact, everyone overcomes things over and over again. So that would be a question.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, it's
Yeah.
in the crowd I used to hang with when I lived near the city. That would have been a scary question.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I would have if I asked the person that, they would have disappeared in about 3 seconds.
It would be considered intrusive,
Yeah,
uh, because that's our culture. I don't want to know who you really are. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I
I
don't
don't.
really. I just want to know if what's your favorite color? You know.
Absolutely. We're so afraid to get real with one another. And I think that's the point of what you and I are doing here and trying to do here is to push back the veil of this cultural well, I'm da 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 dee 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 and do do do, and it's like, but who are you really?
Yeah.
I don't even know who you are still. Power. I don't know who you are. So I think, and I do believe, Chris, that many are longing to talk about their struggles, and more now I think we're doing that, and I'm seeing it popping up here and there, and that's kind of the good news. It's coming out of pain. We're all starting to feel our pain here in the good old US of A. And now we're like, well, what is that pain about? Oh gosh. I think it has to do with being a human being. Really? You know,
And I'm the only one who has it.
yes, and I'm the only one that has it, which of course is not true. We believe that though.
I mean, I've never met anyone who didn't have pain.
No, it doesn't happen.
Can you hear the noise?
Yeah, but it's muffled. It's not bad.
Okay, because I'll mute if it becomes too bad.
No, it doesn't sound bad. It's the roofing guys, by the way, anybody watching.
Yeah, it's a guy on my
Anyway.
roof.
So yeah, I think we wanted to look at that a bit, and how prevalent it is in the culture to hide one's humanity. I can't let you see the messy me, which I think I mentioned to you. This fellow who offers a meditation talked about being messy, and he says, let's all be messy. And he kept saying it. It was so much fun to hear it, because I was thinking, yeah, because we are anyway. We've just got these facades up that hide the messiness. And geez, it was such a freedom to listen to him say it. I'm giving you permission this weekend, get as messy as you want. It was so good. You, you know?
And do you
Yeah.
want to say who that was?
Yeah. So that's a fellow, he offers Monday through Friday at 9 o'clock meditation. Panache, I guess, is pronounced N-A-C-H-E, Desi, D-E-S. And he's from India. And he sits in front of the camera and just opens up his heart. And you can see his heart is open. You can hear it. And it's 20 minutes of a reprieve from what we're talking about, this under the gun, performing, look good all the time, never have any problems, whatever. He's saying, no, be messy. And he has a soothing voice, which helps. It's a beautiful voice.
It's a great
So
message.
yeah, tune in to see him.
It's a great message.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
And then we talked about this whole idea of holding a place of commodified in the commodified. Oh, we have, so we need this performance based understanding of who we are, so that we can hold this place, however meaningless it is, however unimportant it is. I mean, we've all done things in our life professionally that hopefully help other people. I mean, I know you and I probably have, and I think everybody has, because that's what you do in your life, is you perform jobs that people need done.
Sure.
But then we look and but it's such an empty rat race, such a hamster wheel. Where am I going? I'm not getting anywhere. I'm working so hard, and I've got this to-do list, and my family needs this from me, and I need to get dinner on the table, and then there's this whole thing where everything feels sort of empty and meaningless, and then we see a newborn baby, and it's a miracle, and it's beautiful, and it's hasn't done a damn thing.
That's what makes it so beautiful.
As a matter of fact, it needs everything. Not only has it not done anything, it needs everything.
Yes.
So it can't go to the bathroom by itself, or it can't clean up after himself, and he can't make his own meal, and
right.
He's completely dependent.
Yes. Yes.
Which is, dependency is a bad word in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But this baby is totally dependent.
Correct.
And totally beautiful.
Yes. Yes. And all it can offer is some screaming and some gooing and garring. And that's perfectly okay.
And it can keep his parents and his family up all night, and still he's miraculous and beautiful.
And loved. Yes. 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 So we all look in awe at a newborn baby or a very young infant, and long, I think, at some deeper level within us to be able to honor that in ourselves. Like, why can't I have, why can't I, where did that go? Where did it go? That without doing a thing, the value is 100%.
Right.
The value of that baby, 100%. Where does that go? Why does that get diminished in our culture? Why do we have to keep proving ourselves? Why can't we feel,
$64 million question.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think in other cultures, maybe I'm dreaming here, but I think in particularly in indigenous cultures around the world, and that were alive and well in this country at one point, they held on to that. I think the value of a human didn't diminish. And by diminishing, I mean you can't get the same love and care and givenness to you when you're on your feet. You're on your feet now. Okay, let's get this kid walking. Come on, almost walking. I mean, it's like this, it's like we take the model, the progressive model, or the progress model of our country, and we put it on the human. Okay, come on, let's go. What are you learning? What you learn in school today? What are you going to be when you grow up? But clue that unless we're performing at a high standard, and there are standards, let's face it, um, you know, different standard for the, come on now. I mean, so this is, I think, one of the ways in which our particular culture, is the only one I really know, has diminished the value of our beingness, our being. But when I am sitting here talking to you, Chris, I feel my beingness, because I see that you are interested and open to what I'm offering. And that's all it takes. I mean, it's not even rocket science. Really listening, being present for people. Whoa.
Yeah, but how many people really know how to do that? I mean, I think in my life, I don't know, I probably had a half a dozen people really listen to me.
Yeah. That
And it's
many.
not because they don't care.
Right. Right.
We just don't know how. We're constantly, what are we doing? I mean, what do we reflexively do when somebody's talking? We think about ourselves. We compare what they're saying to our own experience.
And we have to fix it.
We have to fix it, right? We have to come up with a solution. So what's behind the fixing? Why do we do that?
The reason, I think, at least one of the reasons, is because we're uncomfortable when things aren't, well, I'll use the phrase status quo. Mm. You've gone off the track here. Come on, get back on the track. Don't get messy. Because if you get messy, then I might have to look at my messy. I don't want to look at my messy. I'm not saying me personally. I'm saying that we're uncomfortable with the messiness of the human experience. Instead of embracing it and being with it and offering it love and attention, it's going to take up too much time. We don't have the time for this now. Come on.
Well, and we think we're the only one who's messy.
Yes. And we think
so I don't want to show this to other people because I'm the only one, and it must be me. It must be something wrong with me. And I'm not gonna show other people my faults because they might tell other people.
And it put me at a disadvantage.
Yes.
So, and of course, it's all about status quo. I remember a cartoon I saw in the New Yorker. I've never forgotten it. The cartoons in the New Yorker, when they're good, they're really good. And it showed a bunch of people walking in a hallway, 10, 15 people, and they all had the cartoon bubble above their head, and they all were saying the same thing, like, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, I feel inadequate, and every one of them was having the same thought. And I just thought, isn't that it? Isn't that it?
God forbid you should talk about that and find out that we're all in the same boat.
Right.
And then maybe we could start feeding ourselves information about that we're not inadequate. We're just human. We're just being who we're supposed to be by the benevolent creator. We weren't created perfect. I mean, can you imagine a life and a culture where everyone was perfect?
Well, they've done a lot of sci-fi movies on this, or actually there was a movie, The Stepford Wives.
I remember in the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, it was about that. And
everybody was a robot.
Yes. Pretty, well, from my perspective, creepy.
Very creepy.
Very creepy, because that because there's some element of truth there.
Mm.
And that's the creepiness, because it's what we're talking about, that we are, pigeonholed into, behaving a certain way right from the get-go. I mean, sorry, folks, I don't mean to offend anyone that's listening, but public schools, at least when I went to them in the 50s and 60s, wowee, let's get the cookie cutter out, and what part of my creativity or any kid's creativity in those classrooms was allowed to grow? None.
I mean, I'm certified to teach K through for 6, I think. It's been, God, 50 years. And I never did get into the classroom, and I did my student teaching, but I never got into the classroom because it was so such a sort of industrialized crowd control kind of thing, and that just didn't appeal to me at all.
Right.
24 kids, and you're trying to, the only thing you can concentrate on with 24 kids who are 7 years old is some kind of order. You can't do anything creative. Yeah, so you were talking about something before, and I had a thought about it. Well, it'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what we're talking about here today basically is the dehumanization, I can't say the word.
Humanization.
The dehumanization, and I'm still not saying it right, of humans. I mean,
Yeah.
And I do believe that there's some other thing afoot now where we're saying, wait a second, it's like we're really getting that that's what's happening finally. I mean, it's almost like we've been living in a sci-fi ourselves, and we're saying, wait a second, no, I don't actually agree with that. I have to say, I don't agree with that. And sadly, or whatever it might be, I'm in my 70s, and I couldn't talk like this in my 30s, my 40s and 50s. I wouldn't dare. It didn't even come in. I was too programmed to be a certain way and say certain things and walk a certain way. And I mean, it's just really
so true. And what I was thinking was that with all of us being programmed, I have to ask myself, the people in my life that I really value, why do I value them? What are they like? Why do I value them? And I asked myself this question, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And the answer was that I valued them because they were authentic. They were their true self. They weren't caught up in this automatic one size fits all personality. And that's such a gift, when you find someone who is authentic and who you're surprised by them, on a regular basis. And you feel comfortable, you feel safe with an authentic person, I think. Even if they're a little crass or tiny bit mean, I still feel comfortable with them because I know they're real.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I think that's both an intuitive sense that we have when we meet someone such as what you're speaking. I've had the same experience. And they run the gamut of, like you said, maybe a little crass, to really super, super sweet. And I don't mean that derogatorily. I mean, really beautiful people. Two common things, I think, is one, they're very present, and two, they're they're owning their humanity in a way that's so, oh, wow, there it is. There's a human. Really? Wow. And it's just such a turn on.
Yeah,
I
it's inspiring.
It is. I remember at church I used to go to back in Quincy, there was a woman, I can't even remember her name, but she worked the fair. They had like a yearly fair where they sold things, and she was with the quilts, as I recall. And she said, Pat, hi, come on over, and I stood in front of the quilts and everything, and she was just talking, not saying anything in particular, but I sensed her heart was like wide open. And I was like, wow, I'm basking in this woman's heart. And it was truly real. And I mean, it's just many, many, many years ago. I can still remember the feeling it brought up in me that she truly cared about me in those moments.
Yeah.
And it was just such a gift. I mean, I still think about it. So
you remembered it how many years later? I mean, you still can get into that state.
It's 50 years. It's between 40 and 50 years ago that occurred. And again, I can't even remember her name, sadly. But yeah, she was that. Of course, I've met others, met other people like that, including yourself, Chris. Not to get you too swollen ahead there now. I'm only kidding.
And I
I
feel
know your
the
head doesn't swell.
same way about you, of course. And
Thank
which is why we're here.
And it seems like exactly. And it seems fairly easy to do this. And yet it isn't for people. I mean, I think I can scare people away from me because I'm wanting this sort of exchange, which is a open-hearted, number one. Number two, unafraid to admit my messiness. I don't have anything to hide, it's all there. I've made big mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done a few right things too. Mostly I made mistakes though, truth be told.
I mean, I think we're all a mixture of both, and yeah, it's really true. The owning of our reality is it's a gift to other people
And to ourselves.
and to yourself. So, and as you just spelled out, you just felt that energy of acceptance and open-heartedness. She didn't say, I have an open heart.
No.
You just perceived it. You just, and that's what happens. We find somebody who's kind or even somebody who's really rude, but who's real. I've experienced that too. I think, okay, this guy didn't go to finishing school, but he's the real deal.
Yeah.
And and it's inspiring. It's and it's also he's being real with me. I can be real with him, and maybe I can be more real with other people.
Absolutely.
It's such a gift
absolutely
we give
to
each other, this realness.
I think so. I think so. I also have run into more than once in my travels, wanting to meet people on this place of, we're going to call it messiness because that's a word, and they're really, they'll push back, they'll not in so many words, they'll want to change the subject, they'll be uncomfortable with it. So not everybody wants to do this, and I've got to accept that and be okay with it, and still not change accordingly because I need to so that I can relate to them. It's just a, we're flying over, it's not, there's no touchdown. We're just saying hi and good to see you. And that's that. So, I have to remember that because you meet people where they are, that's sort of a social work term. It's like the ground zero social work term. Meet people where they are. And of course, that's what you do. So I have to admit, though, I struggle with it because I'm always looking for more than that.
Well, you've
Yeah,
had a taste of it.
yeah.
Not just a taste of it, but you've lived inside it. I mean, do you have any memory of when you realized this is my life is gonna be about? I'm gonna be real.
Um, I think it's been a process, Chris, actually, little by little. I mean, it became more and more important to me to express my inner world. Maybe having the career, in social work and clinical work, and seeing, this common thread. I'm not enough. I'm missing something, I don't have what it takes, or whatever the little phrase is that we have a narrative. And I thought, what's that? Like I believe I thought, what's that about? Well, I think I'm coming up with it. It's about we're not expressing who we truly are. And so how can we feel good about putting on a charade of who others want us to be, for the sake of, staying away from the messiness? I mean, it becomes a one-act play, and yeah. So I think it was just, I think my work did it, and I think my sense that the way I understand the sacred is they like the messiness. They like the mess.
That's why God hangs out in the 12-step meetings.
That's right.
I think God has like a special Airbnb at each 12-step meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yes, Chris, that's right on, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
So you walk into those places. I mean, I walked into Alateen when I was 15, but I don't remember it being difficult. I think finding the place was more difficult than actually walking into the room. But for some people, that first meeting is just
Yeah.
so scary.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're gonna make me stop drinking, or they're gonna find out how flawed I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's gonna find out,
Yeah.
which of course everybody's broken and everybody's flawed and everybody's just laying their messiness out. And what happens? The group gives you a giant psychic hug
Yeah. Yeah.
and says, we want you to be here.
Yeah.
The first thing they do is you say, hi, my name is Chris, and I'm whatever, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an addict, or I'm a member of Al-Anon, or whatever. And they say, everybody, the 12 people or 15 people say, hi, Chris. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a simple thing, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It totally is. It totally is.
So I think there's a permanent residence. God is a permanent residence in every 12-step meeting. And talk about messiness. Yeah. But the thing is that when people get involved in the 12-step program, one of the pearls of wisdom that comes out fairly soon, maybe within 6 months to a year, 3 months to a year, whatever, is that being real is the whole thing, and
Totally.
you can be real in this group of people, and they're going to love you not only are they going to accept you, they're going to love you.
Totally.
And that is so
Yeah,
powerful.
it's absolutely powerful. It's like being reborn.
Yeah.
I remember going, I myself am in recovery, and this Thursday, the 17th of November, I have 31 years.
What's the date?
Anyhow, I remember going to the meetings, the 17th. I remember going to those meetings in the beginning, and of course, I was down in Quincy, Massachusetts, and you mentioned 15 or 20 people. I mean, down there, meetings 50, 60, 75 people,
Ooh, wow.
Oh yeah, easily. In any case, going in and sitting down in a chair in those meetings at first, I literally could not hear. I could not hear. I was so afraid of what I was facing. And then the first thought that came, maybe at the third or fourth meeting, was, I must be an alcoholic. I'm at an AA meeting. So that was, what is it? The scales falling from my eyes. I don't know. Anyhow, but then when I started being able to listen, I began hearing people sharing that vulnerable part of themselves. They were being vulnerable in a group of people, exposing their dark underbelly, and I really start listening and really listening. And then, the transformation begins to happen. And the thought came to me, if only when I was growing up, when we sat around in the living room watching Ed Sullivan or whatever we did, and we've had some conversation, if only we could have spoken like these people are speaking right now, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have the struggle I have today at trying to regain my humanness, because we didn't talk about that. We talked about what you were doing, what you accomplished. There was no heart talk. Our hearts were locked up. And so in AA, the key comes out and like the lock turns and everybody's like, finally, I can say all the things that have been on my heart for all these years. And it's awesome. It's awesome. Really, what a gift AA is. The 12 steps are. Ooh-wee, man, oh man. So that's a little bit of experience with AA. I mean, I have a lot of stories I could tell about how good it is. They make you get up in mass, you join a group and they tell you this, and then the group goes out on commitments. And if you go on the commitment with your group, 6, 7, 8 people, whatever, sign up to go out on a commitment, you have to talk. You have to get up there in front and get in front of a podium with a microphone and begin saying something, hopefully that makes sense. And how that process of doing that, how it shifts the internal, the internal message narrative. I don't have anything important to say, to I have something very important to say. And I don't mean important in the sense of, a scaled importance. I mean an importance of, I'm going to open up my heart, folks, and I'm going to show you something that I haven't been willing to show anyone. It's big stuff.
Yeah, it's holy stuff.
It's holy stuff.
Yeah, this is why I think that God has a permanent Airbnb at every meeting. And it's also what's that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also true that the parking lot at the AA meeting, where the church where the AA meeting is going, is much more crowded parking lot than on Sunday morning.
Yeah, funny the way that works, huh?
Yeah, because on Sunday morning, what do? We get dressed in our finest. We make sure our hair is in place. We are all nice. How are you this morning? How are you this morning? You know, we talk about nice things. We read some nice poetry from the Bible,
Yep.
and nothing happens. Nothing real happens.
Yeah. You don't know anyone better than you did when you walked in the door.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the interesting thing though, if the minister or reverend, whatever, offers a meaningful sermon, or whatever it might be called, their words on a passage from that was read, that's impacting. That can open conversation, and that's why it's important to have. I'm going to use the word dynamic, but I maybe change that to really human minister who has dealt with their stuff, and when they start disassembling a proverb or something like that, they are using their own wisdom, their own hard-earned wisdom, which then opens conversations amongst the congregation. So, does that happen every week? Probably not. But when it happens, it helps that congregation to get messy with each other.
Yeah, and I've been very lucky all my life. I've had every church I've been in has had fabulous ministers who have been real.
Nice.
And yeah, very, very lucky. But that's not always the case. I mean, I've been to church with other people, and the message was not quite as powerful for me as it was in but in any event, the 12-step programs are, I think AA is a little bit more sometimes powerful than Al-Anon or Alateen, because I mean, there's a lot of pain. I mean, there's a lot of pain that comes out in all the meetings. But I don't know, with my mother, her alcoholism, I mean, the remorse could fill a room. And she basically apologized for being an alcoholic without saying I'm sorry her whole sober life, which was 17 years after she got sober.
Yeah.
And to the point where it was really a problem for me that she was apologizing all the time. I mean, I learned her to just be who you are, live into your realness, live into your authenticity. Because
Right.
I don't there, and this actually turns the corner a little bit for me, with regard to saying you're sorry. I think an apology is a very tender, delicate organism. And I actually sat down one day and wrote something about the anatomy of an apology, because I think when people imply or say I'm sorry, there's good value to it the first time, maybe. The 10th time, there's pressure on me. There's pressure on me to accept it, I mean, I had to accept the wrongdoing you did. Why are you asking me now to accept your apology? Just own it. And what is I think it's multi-layered and complicated. I mean, what's your feeling about that?
Yeah, thanks. I was thinking while I was speaking about it. So in the big book, it talks about when we go back and we write the wrongs that we've done, and they call it amends, making an amend. And that's different than an apology. It's a different word, but I'm going to have to look up the two definitions of those words. But what they're clear about in the book is this is not about, you are there to clean up your side of the street. And it is not about what the person that you're making the amend to does with it. It's none of your concern. So that's what you're alluding to here. You're saying, you have this pressure. There should be no pressure. You're not going to get forgiveness or any of that. If it comes, beautiful. But that isn't the point of making an amend. And making an amend is that you're clearing away the wreckage of the past as best you can. And so, yeah, if it becomes what you're saying there, more, I need something back from you, excuse me, then you're going down the wrong trail. This is not about getting anything back from anybody that you've hurt. Why would it? That wouldn't even make sense, would it? This is just owning your stuff. And so it's really clear the way it's written in the big book, step 9, when we go to make amends, which I thought is really helpful to look at every once in a while, because we're going to have to make amends our whole lives, because we're often stepping on others' toes. If we're going to say we're sorry, we're going to make an amend for that and clear it up for ourselves, we have no expectation of getting a blessing from the other person. They can hold it. They can say, I appreciate you saying that to me. They can say any number of things, but it doesn't matter what they do. It's what you do. So this is coming out of that codependent stuff, it's a big shift, because codependent is, I need you to forgive me before I can forgive myself. Well, that's
It's giving our power away, isn't it?
it is giving the power away. That's right. And we're not asked to do that in the program. We're asked to build our power in God and through a spiritual awakening.
And how many people would you guess have to completely reframe their understanding of God when they come into the program?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I don't know. I certainly had to. Yeah, because I had that. Is the word contingency? I had the contingency God. He'll, she, it will forgive me if I can get it all correct. Which, of course, I'm never going to get it all correct. That is the God that I had. I had to get it all correct.
And where do you think that came from?
I think teachings as a child, probably, although it probably was there too. I think from my parents were that way with themselves. I think they were very hard on themselves, very tortured in certain ways, particularly my father. And so he was my role model. I mean, if he never looks comfortable, if he never gets comfortable with himself, I'm afraid I'm going to have a hard time doing the same. So
well, when we're kids, we're imitating, aren't we?
Absolutely. So to imitate a man who had deep regret, shame, and all of those sort of negative self-talk. Wow, I mean, I can't rise above that. I can't, he's my model. My mom was the same. And their families. And they had one brother, Brother Jim. Brother Jim rose above that, and nobody liked him.
Okay, there you go. If you rise above
there
it.
It is. Yeah, he rose above it, and he thinks he's better than. No, he doesn't think that. He just rose above the storyline that we're just blue collar laborer farmers, because my father's family were farmers, dairy and also woodsmen, and they were blue collar. I mean, blue. I'd say their collars were purple. I mean, they were uptight, And you know, and there's where the alcohol comes in. You know, I mean, if you can't give yourself a break and recognize that you're good no matter what, you're gonna have such a chasm in your heart that you gotta pour some alcohol on that, or something, some kind of addiction that seemingly removes you from that pain, even how short a time. It's like it's a reprieve. You know, I'm going to the oasis. I'm gonna see if I can find a little bit of peace. It seems like alcohol works pretty well, and it does. That's why people do it. And of course, now we have opiates, which even removes one even more. It's like being dead but alive. You know, you're dead to all things that matter. By that I mean love, and you're still breathing.
Such a heartbreaking,
Ooh-wee.
such a heartbreaking. The opioid thing, in my opinion, I mean, I haven't really thought this through, but it's kind of like alcohol or drug addiction, no, alcohol addiction on steroids times 1,000.
Oh gosh, absolutely.
It just,
Absolutely.
it just changes your brain permanently, I think.
It numbs you to such a degree, as I've heard it spoken of, that, like I just said, you are to all intents and purposes, you're not alive, but you're breathing.
But so I just wanted to get back to your father's experience. So my mother's experience was so different than that. She grew up in a sort of what her family would have liked to have thought was a high society. They weren't wealthy, but they were very comfortable, and they were sort of being prominent in the community was important to them. So reputation was important, and doing things the proper way. Proper was a very, very common word in our house, and you had to be proper. You know, when I was growing up, I was wanting nothing to do with proper. So, but she had a loving family. She was, but her mother had a nervous breakdown during the Depression, and my mother sort of had to take care of her, and so there goes my mother's teenage years. You know, all she did was go to school and come home and take care of her mom. But you know, we all have these neuroses that we deal with growing up. And so, but when my mother started drinking, it was like the best part of her life when she started drinking. She had never had a drink before. My father was a minister. He was a chaplain in World War II. And in order to, his theory was that if he went down to the mess with the men and had a beer with them, that they would let their guard down, and they, you know, let them bond together, right? And I think it was probably a good idea, except that my mother accompanied them, and she really liked this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think she was able to relax. Yeah, yeah. She was able to relax when the relaxing muscle in her wasn't real strong. You know, she was always poised and, you know, in charge and in control, and polite. So it's so different. But I think my theory about alcoholism is that it's a sugar addiction, among other things.
Sure, I agree. I agree.
And so I think, you know, because she had a wonderful marriage. She had, you know, my sister and I were probably 3 and 4 when she started drinking, and life was good for her. Life was good for her.
Yeah.
And yet I heard stories about from old friends who used to go to their house for parties that mom just was not holding her booze. You know, she just couldn't stop when everybody else stopped. She wasn't, and that was when very early on. So there goeth the addictive nature of alcohol.
Yeah,
And this has been since the beginning of time that,
absolutely.
because the Bible talks about not being able to hold your alcohol. But isn't
Sure.
it interesting that your father and my mother came at the disease from such different set of
Yeah,
issues, right?
yeah, yeah,
My mother was happy. Your father was sort of maybe tortured a little bit by,
sure.
because everybody, a lot of people are tortured out there
Yes,
by life.
yes. Ab-
Um, yeah, and my mother just couldn't stop. She just couldn't stop.
yeah,
And even there were no problems in her life, and she couldn't stop.
right. Yeah. I just to touch a base on a couple of things you said, there definitely has been some research around the metabolization of sugars in, of course, diabetics, of course, and alcoholics that somehow sugar it passes through the blood-brain barrier, which it's one of the elements that can go through. And instead of being able to, instead of the body being able to process it and clear it, it actually doubles it in some way. And therefore is this, this response. It doesn't leave the body as quickly as it does for people with normal. So there is definitely a correlation with the metabolisms and sugar and alcoholism. And then the other thing, excuse me, that struck me when you were saying the properness of your family was that in the 70s, early 70s, there opened a big bar room / dance hall in Boston called the Improper Bostonian, and everyone loved it because we're talking coming out of the 60s where stuff got stirred up by the love generation, whatever. And this Improper Bostonian, maybe it actually did open in the late 60s, was just like a hit in Boston. I mean, it was like, just the name is calling me, I want to be improper finally.
Music to my ears, being improper.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny. But you're right. But I'm thinking maybe the commonality also between your mom and my dad is the word they use in the big book, resentment. Now, we can have resentment and not have really conscious awareness of it because we bury it. So I'm thinking with mom and having to be responsible to care for her mother and missing many things perhaps, and things she wanted to just relax. And then with my dad, similar things coming from rather poor circumstances, and he served in the CCCs, the Civilian Conservation Corps. I actually have his discharge. I found it the other day from the CCCs, and in 1926, I think it was. Anyhow, yeah. So this thread of resentment is big in the addictive world. It's always gets, well, I shouldn't say it always. If it can be uncovered and looked at and processed, and in the big book they call, there's a term they use in AA, to do a turnaround on this resentment, look at it from a new angle, the angle that you were in that too. You weren't just a witness, you were in that resentment. Now it's 50 years later, and you're still feeling the same charge when brought up a situation that happened 50 years ago. You still get a gut wrench type feeling. Oh, that was terrible. I mean, that ain't a good thing. Mm-hmm. So this work, the 12 steps, is to address many things, but one of them is this deep rooted resentment we don't even know we have, but it's calling the shots.
Why do you so much havoc happens because of our lack of awareness of what we're going through?
Yes, indeed.
So why do you think we have that? I mean, Of course, I should ask God, but I'll ask you instead.
Oh gosh. Well, I think it's because of what we've been talking about the whole time here. We don't really have conversations about this stuff. So it's buried. It's not to be talked about. And so there's no process for feeling what we need to feel, making amends, perhaps forgiving ourselves in different cases. It's buried, but it's buried alive. And until and hopefully if one has the courage through the grace of something that says, I'll be with you. I'm gonna be with you. And one senses that, like they sense they've got a companion, not only in the rooms with the people that are there, but there's a companion that leaves with you when you walk out the door. We have different terms. We can say God, we can say the benevolent one, we can say the source of all good, whatever one chooses. But certainly when we surrender, again, through grace mysteriously, it's like we're saying, there you are, and you're putting your hand out to God. Hey, you're gonna be with me at this? Of course I'm gonna be with you. I've been waiting for you to ask.
Right. If she'd only ask.
If you would only have asked, you would have been out of this. But it's just amazing how stubborn the ego can get and how fear-based the ego can get, that it disallows this letting go. And it's just amazing how strong it can be.
But also, I think I agree with you, and I think also the fact that it's not modeled for us in any of the arenas that we find ourselves in, school, in church. It'd be modeled in church, and it's not. At home,
Right.
Because our spouse
Right.
probably didn't get this message.
Yep. Yep.
It's just not
Oh,
modeled. So how are we supposed to get it out of osmosis? And the culture certainly is telling us the reverse.
right. 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 Yeah. Well, the good news is there are movements, and I think we've spoken about them here before. The story that reconnects, and these are groups that get together and talk turkey,
Is that a
Thanksgiving.
is that a group? The story that
The story that reconnects. Yep, you could Google that.
wow.
Yep. There's a bunch of different ones, and I'm up here in Maine. I mean, maybe it's true in all states, but I think in Maine, because there's a lot of isolation, because there's just not as many, it's not as big a populace. It's happening a little quicker here. Also, nature's important up here, and I think that fact sort of softens something in us, that we're so exposed to this glorious nature, and cement is hot, it's not right outside the door. So there is something afoot up here in Maine around that. And also there's a lot of indigenous awareness in Maine, and I think that helps. So all this combination of things, other states have it too. I mean, I'm not saying it's just Maine's, but there is this movement towards, can we get real? I mean, come on, might we just get real for a moment and talk about why is it like, this is so common, people agree every time I say this. I go into the supermarket, and it was never like old home week, but people would meet your eyes, and there'd be a smile, and it still happens occasionally, but now more often than not, everybody's moving around, and they're doing anything not to catch your eye. Like, it's really wild. What is that? I mean, I know COVID played a role for sure. Yeah. So, but I'm on the lookout when I'm in the market. I actually said to somebody, I thought maybe one day a week, I'll just go into the market, even though I don't really have to buy anything. I'll push a cart around, and I'll look out for all the people who can't find things on shelves, and say, can I help you? And they inevitably say, yeah, I'm looking for a nutmeg, some guy in his 70s, nutmeg. Oh, nutmeg, there it is. Thank you. I mean,
It's a connection.
it's a connection. Absolutely.
And we're herd animals and we need the connection. It's
We
just
do.
part of our DNA.
We do. And the culture has really done all that it could to not have that happen.
Right.
So these groups and movements are opening up. Yeah, nonviolent activism is sort of a heading. And that friend of mine, Gabe, he's got this thing going on, the Rose Chapel. And he's making his efforts, and he's doing it in his quiet but indomitable spirit way.
I think he's awesome. Just
Yeah, yep, he sure
Rose,
is.
right? The Rose is his.
Rose, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll send you something after we're finished that he did recently that I thought was really, really great. Talking about much of what we talk about here, how creating a setting where people can be real. It's not that hard.
No, it's not. All it takes, the meeting, of course, the AA meeting or the 12-step meetings have taught me about this, is that all it takes is one person being real, and then it just spreads all the way around the room.
Yep.
And if
it's like they threw open the bulkhead door.
Yes,
Bam.
yes.
Yeah.
And if I've never been to a meeting where there wasn't a lot of realness, but until that one person is real, other people don't.
They hedge their bets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And
there is that. Yeah, I mean, I've been pondering this authenticity thing all my life, because well, I think it was because my father was so authentic. I mean, it never occurred to the man to be inauthentic. He was just real, real, real. And what a beautiful soul, what a beautiful man. And he was homeless as a 13, 12-year-old for 2 years.
Wow.
And lost one child, one parent when he was 5 and the other one when he was 12. I mean, he just suffered a lot. And yet there was something in him and that was so real, so authentic, so true. And then I would walk out of my family, my home where he was, and nobody else was doing it. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And so that was my home base, the authentic thing. And I've just been craving it ever since, because I mean, it's just not interesting to me. It's totally boring to have people put on airs and I understand being in fear. I know people come by the inauthenticity from pain, I think.
Sure.
From lack of acceptance.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have compassion for that. But I tell you, my heart just, if I see an ounce of truth, my heart just opens up for it.
Yes. Yes. I'm with you, Chris. And I think my experience has been the same too, that I often felt I didn't fit in, in groups and with different people growing up and in school and so forth, because I didn't have a repertoire. I didn't have a superficial repertoire that I could, pull out, and the things that mattered to me weren't what the things that mattered to others. So often felt like the odd girl out. There's a great book actually titled The Odd Girl Out.
Oh, really?
Is about this. So it turns out it's okay now, like now it's okay. I totally accept this different way of being, and fall away from people pretty quickly that aren't able to I don't know if I don't want to say be real, but are so either afraid, and that's part of it. It is fear, or have made maybe an inner decision to keep who they are quite hidden. There's a draw to it too. Like I can almost feel that with people, and then it'll pique my curiosity or my desire to connect even more. So I've got to watch out for that, because it's almost like I'm trying to rush somebody's process, like that's their process. That's where they are. I should be acceptant of that, as opposed to, come on, get real with me. I'm ready. They're not ready. I just got to leave that where it is. And just be real myself, and let the chips fall where they may. And, most of the time I'm lonely. So, but I accept that. I do. I must, because it's the truth. And as love would have it, another term for God, he gives me Chris.
Well, and we have each other, and that's a huge blessing.
Yes, absolutely. So there's something to be said to being true to oneself, and waiting for the doors to open as they will, and not trying to control them, and so on and so forth. So,
well, I think this has been a really great conversation, and I'm so grateful to you for not just participating, but I always feel like I'm encouraged by our back and forth, and that it brings something out in me that I didn't even know I had.
ditto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, my dear. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you on the next Holy Compost.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.